So I sent this package. Came out beautiful, but it was a coin toss. He got that folder on Monday at 12 o'clock. At 12:10, he picked up the phone. He called the director of the school and he said, you know what? I promised myself that I was never, ever going to do this again. But with this kid, I got to give him a chance. So he changed my life right then and there. And when that happened, all the kids, all of a sudden, they were treating me nicely. Everybody was talking to me. I was like, I was like the piranha that was, set on the side. And all of a sudden, I become, the big man on campus. And I said, what's going on? And I said, well, Bruce, accepted your offer to see if you could intern with him.
Well, I love the San Gabriel Valley.
Welcome to the My SGV podcast.
So I grew up here and I still live in Alhambra.
I was raised in between Temple City and Alhambra.
Eventually resided in South San Gabriel.
Our mission is to capture and share the stories of the people of the San Gabriel Valley.
Monterey Park has pretty much been my whole life.
Well, I'm proud to say that I was born and raised in the San Gabriel Valley.
We believe our diversity is what makes the SGV great. And no matter where you are from in the San Gabriel Valley, you will feel welcome. All right, SGVers, welcome back to another episode of the My SGV podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you are new here, we bring you the stories of the people of the San Gabriel Valley. And if you are a returning listener, thank you so much for spending this time with us. We do appreciate it. Scott, I know you enjoy music. Actually, I don't know what level you do. Like, are you always listening to music on the car?
Oh, yeah,
in the car,
always. Yeah, always.
Do you sing in the car?
I do, yeah.
Oh, yeah, awesome.
I do, yeah. That's about the only place I will sing.
But still, I mean, you're enjoying.
I love music. I mean, I love music, but it's my, the music I grew up with.
Sure.
Right. So, I mean, meaningful to me. Yeah.
And if you're a fan of the show, you know that Scott is a huge Beatles fan. I mean,
yeah, of
I think
course,
fan maybe is an understatement. Right?
Oh, I was just in London and I went to Abbey Road. Every Beatles fan will know Abbey Road, and I actually, went to Mecca, and I crossed the crosswalk, and saw Abbey Road Studios.
Well, I say I like music, right? I listen to music. I like music. I like all kinds of music. Whenever anybody asks me what kind of music I like, I say I like good music because I think good music is timeless, right? And my wife likes music, but at a different level. She's a singer. She was on Canadian Idol. I think she broke the top 100.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. But she's not pop, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's a tremendous singer with like a really powerful voice. And when we were driving with the kids in the car, and sometimes we're singing our songs and stuff, and it's just amazing to hear her sing. But when some songs come on, she describes the production value, and she says, "Oh, this person has a lazy producer," or "This is like really well produced." And I'm like, what are you hearing? What are you describing? I don't know what you mean. And she's like, well, imagine you just had a band and they just put one mic in the room and they're capturing that. Like, that's very low production, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like she's describing it in terms that I can understand.
Oh yeah.
And she's like, imagine someone who's like really familiar with like the sound and how they want things to come in and out, and
right. So she can pick up on like hearing certain instruments, and
she says she can hear a producer's talent, gift, passion in a song, aside from the song itself.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's incredible, But there's someone who has like a different level or love of music, or those sounds that I don't have an awareness of.
You see, the problem I have is I can't identify musical instruments. I can hear a sound, but I have no idea what instrument is producing that sound. I wish I was better educated.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's good enough just to enjoy it, right? Just to appreciate it and enjoy it. So,
right, yeah.
Well, before I get into today's guest, I want to thank Paris Baguette for providing the delicious treats every week for our guests. Go check them out in the city of San Gabriel on Las Tunas and Mission Drive. Say hi to Jason for us. All right, let's get to today's guest. Today's guest has mixed and engineered some of the most iconic Latin music albums you've ever heard. He's worked with artists who have sold out arenas, dominated the airwaves, and topped charts worldwide. With 13 Latin Grammy nominations, gold and platinum records, and a career spanning over 30 years, this man's ear for perfection has shaped the sounds of legends, from Luis Miguel to Demi Lovato, and even creating soundscapes for hit TV shows like The Desperate Housewives. His influence in the industry is undeniable. His journey began humbly at just 9 years old with a simple tape recorder and a passion for sound. That drive led him to work under Grammy-winning Bruce Sweden, collaborating on projects like Michael Jackson's Super Bowl halftime show. Today he runs his own state-of-the-art studio, Watersound Studios, where he continues to produce music heard across the globe. Let's welcome Carlos Castro. Carlos, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's welcome. It's nice to have an opportunity to talk to a
professional.
Right?
Thank you for the compliments. I appreciate it.
Yeah, people walk in here of all walks of life, right? And they're like impressed. And then we have real professionals come in,
right.
And I feel like, oh no, we're very amateur here. But now we do have the professional in the studio.
Not at all, Russell.
And we were chatting a little bit about how you found the podcast, and it was through a reel of Cook's Tortas.
That is correct. I'm very close with the family that owns Cook's Tortas, and that's how I found you. Pure serendipity.
Yeah. And then we connected over Instagram and we chatted, and now here you are.
Exactly.
So this show is really about you, Carlos, and your connection with the San Gabriel Valley. So how are you connected with the SGV?
Well, it's threefold. I have three connections through the San Gabriel Valley. The first one is through Cook's Tortas, which are there in Monterey Park. The second one is with a Mexican singer who is now 80 years old and who recently was signed to Warner Brothers Records. His name is Antonio Zamora, and he was an actor, singer, and I've done work for him. And then the third connection is with a great guitarist who's from the north part of Spain. His name is Fran Iturbe. He lives in Monrovia, and I've done work with him on different projects at his studio in Monrovia.
I see. Yeah. So you are connected with people who's in businesses whose lives touch the SGV.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
So where did you grow up, Carlos?
I grew up in Mexico City. That's where I was born and raised. My mother was a writer. She wrote Spanish grammar books. So I grew up in a household that was filled with books and filled with interesting guests, from painters to writers. And so I was basically what my parents would describe as the unexpected surprise. My siblings are, my next sibling is 9 or 10 years older than I am. So my upbringing was very adult-like, if you would. My grandmother, because my mom worked a lot, she had to promote these books, she would take care of me. My grandmother was born in the late 19th century. So you can imagine that I had the upbringing and education of two women that were brought, that were from the 19th and 20th century. So people sometimes jokingly say, well, how come you're so formal? Well, that's just inevitable. It was just part of my upbringing and the way that I just, in the way that I express myself and the way that I think and in the way that I view certain parts of life.
I spent some time in Mexico City. Mm-hmm. I lived with a family. I was about 20, 21, and
what era would this be?
It was mid-70s.
Oh, fabulous era. That's great.
Yes. And I'm trying to remember the name of the zona that I lived in, but I can't remember right now. But I lived with a family, and I went to school every day for a semester studying Spanish, mm-hmm. and came home to a Spanish family that didn't really speak English. So I was really surrounded. I really loved it. But I love Mexico City. I love it.
It's such a cosmopolitan
so
city.
Cosmopolitan.
There's it's a melting pot of different cultures.
Yes.
and that's, to me, that's what makes it so exciting. And it gives you a really a broad view of what the world is.
Yes.
All this immersed with Mexican culture.
Yeah.
Which is just absolutely beautiful.
Now, it's a beautiful city. At the time I lived there, I don't know whether the smog was at maybe its all-time worst, just like it was in L.A. at that era.
Correct.
I don't know. I haven't been to Mexico City since.
Well, geographically, Mexico City is surrounded by a valley. So air currents are not are hard to come by, especially during December, and because what happens is that you get a phenomenon called thermal inversion, in which the hot air that is pushing up, and then there's cold air that is coming down. It doesn't allow for the smog to basically be cleared
and it was
out.
around that time of year I was there. Mm-hmm. But it's a very sophisticated city. You grew up in a very sophisticated surrounding, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I was very fortunate.
I mean, with your mother and your grandmother, as you described.
That is correct.
But the city itself is very sophisticated.
It is, and there's culturally is very diverse. There's a lot of activities and many things that you can do, and a lot of educational programs that I took advantage back then that were existent. Mm-hmm. And so it was a great time to be a kid, growing up in the 1970s and 1980s. And just the music was absolutely superb too. It was a time that deeply influenced me.
And is that, and then you left in the 80s?
No, I left in the 1990s. What happened is that when I graduated from high school, I was not accepted by any university. I was not what you would call a star child at school. But I always wanted to pursue engineering. And so the opportunity arose for me to go to a place in Winter Park, Florida, that is called Full Sail Center for the Recording Arts. It's a trade school, and it just like any school, it gives you an introduction to what the industry is about. But before then, I was working at a recording studio in Mexico City for 3 years, just basically doing the labor of an assistant engineer gopher, making errands and just recording commercials and demos, basically.
So there, of course, all societies and cultures have many types of music, and many kinds come from Mexico specifically. But can you identify that? I know ranchero, right?
Oh, you're talking about what are the different genres within Mexico?
I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
It's highly diverse, but we can say that mariachi music is highly representative. Banda music, which is it has a lot of brass instruments to it, is also highly representative. Norteño music, which is it uses drums, electric bass, or sometimes upright bass, and vocals and accordion, is representative of the northern part of Mexico. There's also, the trio music from Yucatan, where it's it's three singers singing a three-part harmony with guitars. And there's also the beautiful music from Chiapas, which it uses vibraphones. So it's highly diverse, basically.
And do you find yourself working with any of those kinds of music?
Yes, I have. I've been very fortunate to work on different genres of music with mariachi records, on norteño records, some banda records, and marimba records I haven't been able to work with. That's a very specific genre, but I do appreciate it and love it. And that's also not only from the southern part of Mexico, but also Central America, certain parts of Belize, Guatemala. They're very, heavily influenced. There's also cumbia, if you want to dance, that is also, there's so many genres and subgenres that it's just hard to really pinpoint which one is representative of Mexico, but if you say one, then the other camp will rise up and say, hey, no, but, banda music is the best. No, but mariachi music is the best. So these are all genres that really encompass the sentiment of Mexican people.
Carlos, it sounds like before you left Mexico, you had already developed a strong passion for sound and music.
Very much so.
When you look back on your time, your early years in Mexico, what stands out as pivotal in that journey to you?
Well, I think that it was me falling in love with music. I started out as a disc jockey, spinning records, vinyl records, and I would used to basically go out during the weekends and spin records at parties. I would take piano lessons. I've always had a keen interest for writing lyrics, and so I also, although I'm not a published songwriter, I've written many songs too as well. And so that's a part of me. It's both music and the art of being able to create, to write something, either lyrically or short stories that, as a kid, that was something that I was deeply attracted to. Plus, because of that, I was, I was very insular in the way that I was. I was not the popular kid in school, but I was more like, the guy who would stand out for doing things that are different than what other kids were doing back then. I was never into soccer, but I loved tennis. So and kids would play soccer all the time, so I was just not into it. To this day, I don't watch sports. It's not something that I like, but I respect it,
And then your journey took you from Mexico to the States.
That is correct. Yes,
Yeah.
As I said, I went to this school in Winter Park, Florida, and I studied there for about a year and a half. But while I was in Mexico and I was working at this studio called B&K Studios that was owned by Javier Breña and Felipe Kobe, I was listening to a lot of records, and there were two particular records that really stood out from all of the records that I was listening to. One of them was George Benson's Give Me the Night, and the other one was Michael Jackson's Thriller. Both of those records were produced by Quincy Jones, and they were recorded and mixed by Bruce Swedien, who would later become a pivotal figure in my career.
So can you explain what that means to be recorded and then mixed? Like, what is the difference? What is that process?
Absolutely. Just in a nutshell, an album is basically you record the instruments. Either all the musicians are gathering together in the studio, recording at the same time, or you basically create what I call a layering process until you achieve the desired arrangement or sound that you want to achieve. Modern production techniques are such that you can even, these days, many people use samples. Samples are just snapshots of notes that an instrument will play, and they will put it all together inside of the computer. And they could use virtual orchestras, virtual pianos. But to me, there's just something that gets lost along the way when you're not using a specialist, a musician that has really focused their life into playing an instrument and developing a sound of their own. And that's the bottom line. It's sound. And that sound travels in records that we've listened to as part of the personality and part of the connection that we feel. Like you said that you were a Beatles fan. I mean, there's so many things and many examples on those records that were created from what the different players brought to the table from the song, which is the core of this, of the music. If you don't have a good song, then it's like a weak foundation. Everything crumbles underneath that. And then once you have a good song, then you need a great arrangement. And George Martin was just absolutely brilliant in coming up with these arrangements. And then you need a good sound, which Geoff Emerick provided, a lot of fuel into that. And then you have these, what I call cathedral of sounds, which is Abbey Road, and all of these different studios. And these musicians had, back then, with what people would consider as crude tools, they were able to create all of these soundscapes that were just absolutely magnificent. But I don't want to get ahead of myself here. But it's I think that the bottom line is it's an interconnection with music and sound that has always existed. If those are not interconnected along with a great song that can, what do I characterize as a good song, is a song that you can pick up a guitar or pick up a piano and you can just play it and it's there. it's got melody, it's got harmony, and it's got soul.
So did you study music in Mexico?
Not enough to consider myself a musician. I know enough music in order to express myself and convey certain ideas.
So you're more in a production or technical
Production and
area?
Engineering, yes, area. That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
But you have to know music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You do. And you have to know if something is going awry in the studio in order to know how to fix things and have that sensitivity to pick up on that very quickly.
What was it about those two albums that sort of caught your attention?
You know, it was this, and this is a term that my mentor used. It was called sonic personality, which is basically it's your own interpretation of what music should sound like, how those elements that are being presented to you should be blended, should be presented, and should be emphasized within a song. And what really caught my eye is the translation that these records had. By translation, I mean that if I played that in a boombox, it would sound just as great as if I was playing it on large speakers. That is the mark of a great engineer who knows how that music can translate even to a small computer speaker. And so back then, Bruce was working on truly cutting-edge records, and it became my desire to work for him someday. It was one of those, long-term dreams. We all have those. The only difference is that mine actually came true.
And how did that come about?
Well, I went to school, and the school had a very good relationship with Bruce. Back then, there was a point in the class in which people would, the professor would ask, well, what do you want to do when you graduate? And there were a lot of more commercial studios back then. So the typical road for an engineer would be to start as a runner or gopher, then graduate as assistant engineer. And then if luck would have it, then you would be given the opportunity to engineer a session, or, if you became friendly with a producer, then the producer will grant you the open door opportunity to basically work on a record. So when they were asking all the kids, well, what do you want to do? Some said, well, I want to work at Hit Factory in New York, which no longer exists. Another studio in Miami, I want to work at Criterion, Miami. And everybody asked me, well, Carlos, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to work for Bruce Swedien. And everybody just laughed. And the professor said, Carlos, you're better off just going back to Mexico. And it's fine. I mean, 1990s, it's fine. Keep that in mind, okay? I was upset. I was not offended. I said, okay. So when the time came for me to graduate, I went to the placement office and I said, I need you to get me Bruce's information. And again, the placement director said, well, Carlos, I think you're better off just going. I said, listen, why don't you do your freaking job? I'll do my freaking job and just give me that information. So I knew I only had a chance to make a great impression with Bruce. So I befriended a friend of mine whose name is Luis Herrera, who's now one of the top graphic designers in Mexico, to help me with a presentation that involved a folder with my logo. And I didn't have much experience back then, obviously, but I really labored over writing a cover letter that would jump out and at least express my desire to work for him. Mind you, this was like a 1 in a million shot of working for this guy. And so I sent my letter. I remember that I got an offer to work at a studio in Naples, Italy, but I had to decide on a Thursday. And I basically said, no, just give it to the Australian guy. I'm going to take a chance and send my package to Bruce. So I sent this package. Came out beautiful. It was just, the folder, everything about it. But it was a coin toss. He got that folder on Monday at 12 o'clock. At 12:10, he picked up the phone. He called the director of the school and he said, you know what? I promised myself that I was never, ever going to do this again. But with this kid, I got to give him a chance. So he changed my life right then and there. And when that happened, we all know how news spread, especially in a small school. And like it was, I didn't know about this until it came to me. All the kids, all of a sudden, they were treating me nicely. Everybody was talking to me. I was like, I was like the piranha that was, set on the side. And all of a sudden, I become, the big man on campus. And I said, what's going on? And I said, well, Bruce, accepted your offer to see if you could intern with him. It was an internship. But before the deal was sealed, I had to prepare a video of myself just talking, 3 questions that he sent to me. I guess he wanted to see that I was, not Cocoa for Cocoa Puffs, and that I was just, functional somewhat. And he liked it. And so I interviewed with him at his house in, where was it? It was in South Florida. I forget what the name of this. It's the last island before Cuba. I forget what the name is.
Oh, you mean those Key
West.
Key West.
Thank you so much. Yes. So it was Key West. And he says, okay, I'm going to give you a chance. So I started with him. I started working with him in 1991.
I'm just curious, did he ever tell you what was it about what you sent him that made him interested?
Within the letter, I included a story that I shared with Russell about a tape recorder. That tape recorder, I used it for like 2 years, recording everything from car commercials, any commercial on the TV, songs that would come out on the radio. And then one day it occurred to me, I said, I wonder what the interior of a microwave sounds like when it's on. So I put the tape recorder in record. I said, 2 seconds is not going to hurt it.
Oh, gosh.
So I put the tape recorder inside the microwave for 2 seconds. And thank God, that could have been an instant explosion. It died, but obviously the tape, I got the sound that I wanted.
Oh,
but
you
the
did
tape
get the sound?
Oh, yeah. It's very high-pitched sound because I played it back. But the tape recorder was dead. But Bruce found that story very amusing because he said, if you're willing to sacrifice your recorder just to get a sound, then you're willing to do anything to make a song great.
Wow.
So more so than what the contents were of the resume or the letter, it was the emotional significance, I think, that was conveyed. And I was able to convey that. Just out of, it was luck, fate, whatever you want to call it.
Now, is he still active?
Sadly, he passed away. He passed away 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, he passed away 3 years ago.
At that time, 1991, he was living in South Florida?
No, he was living here.
Oh,
he was living, that's why I moved to California. He was living in Moore Park, California.
Okay.
Very close to Thousand Oaks.
And so he was part of a studio, or did he own a studio?
He owned his own studio. He was an independent engineer. He was considered back then one of the top 5 engineers in the world.
Really?
He had done all of Michael Jackson's records, from Off the Wall, Thriller, Bad, Dangerous. So he had just finished Dangerous when I started working for him. Oh. And it was a very exciting time for him.
So what happens? He has a studio. Mm-hmm. Does he just get tapes or electronic, impulses, whatever, or do artists go to that studio?
Well, keep in mind it's 1991, so it's pre all of this technology that exists today.
Uh-huh.
Back then, there was certain computer systems that you can record and edit with, but they were not as sophisticated as they are these days. So he worked with musicians that actually played real instruments, and his studio in Moore Park was mostly for mixing when everything was already recorded and just needed to be mixed, or if it needed to be overdubbed. What's an overdub is to basically record on top of what's already been recorded on separate tracks, because everything is recorded on, back then it was multi-track tape machines, which would basically, you could record an individual instrument per track. So then that way, like a conductor, you would have to put all that together. That's what a mixer does. A mixer is acting as a conductor, blending all of those different instruments in order to create a cohesive sound.
What is it that you do?
I'm a music producer, engineer, and mixer. So I wear different hats depending on what the project calls for.
And you have your own studio?
I sure do, yes.
And where is that?
It's in Studio City.
Okay.
It's in Studio City.
And so do you go there every day? That's
yes.
your...
Yes.
And what do
and I work at other studios, but I work mostly out of my own studio.
And do artists come there?
Yes,
and
they do.
They will record and...
And then later on, I would mix the projects, yes. I have a live room. The live room is where the musicians play, that is big enough to house a 17-piece string ensemble. So it's big enough to do the majority of productions, but if I need to record an orchestra, or if it's a big band or something that is a bigger setup, then I would need to go elsewhere, which I'm only happy to do. I always love supporting other studios, as it's these are difficult times for everyone, especially with studios.
When I saw Abbey Road, I was surprised at how small it is. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I know, I've never been there.
Okay. It's basically...
But Studio One it has to be big enough to house a 65 or 75 piece
Because
orchestra.
I thought the London Symphony Orchestra would perform there, right?
Well, they would play, yes. Either the London Philharmonic Orchestra.
Or Philharmonic, right, okay. Yeah, so that would be the biggest of their studios there.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so, yeah.
From my
It
understanding.
looked like the size of a house,
Okay.
But, and it's a reconverted house.
That is, yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
maybe there's a basement. I'm not sure, where everything is.
I've never been there, so
Yeah.
I've only seen pictures.
Okay.
So I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly.
Okay.
I can tell you of other studios, but not of
But
Abbey Road.
you could house a 17-person.
String ensemble, yes. At my studio, yes. It's big enough for that.
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct.
How long have you had your studio?
Since 1999. It was
Oh,
all
wow.
built from the
Long
ground
time.
up. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. And so, is it all Latino music that you work with?
No, it's a mixed bag of projects that I've worked on. It's things for film and TV as well
Oh,
as
that's right. I heard
Latin
Desperate
artists.
Housewives.
Desperate Housewives, Hellcats, which was a short-lived TV series on the WB. Music for documentaries, for some movies, and so it's been for all this time. It's just been a mixed bag. Every year is different. You never know. It's Pandora's box. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Before we go on, I want to ask: did you ever go back to that professor who told you that and see his face when he learned?
No.
Oh no!
I never did. I'm not that kind of person. I think that I think that you lead by example at the end of the day, and you just whatever they wanted to say, it's their own, it's their own way of looking at things. And back then, I think people were much more narrow-minded than they are these days.
Yeah. Not to rub it into his face, but to see if he had sort of a changed heart or perspective, on you.
Pride takes an issue there. I don't know if he would admit that he was wrong or not.
I see. Well, Carlos, we ask each guest to bring an item of significance with them. You're one of the few cheaters who bring more than one. So
Well,
I'm just kidding. So what did you bring with you today?
Well, you're going to have to scan this closer because it's not going to be very obvious, okay?
Okay.
So what I have here, it's a shellac record. A shellac record was made from the, I would say, 1900s all the way to the 1950s. These were the popular records of the day, and this particular record was made by the Edison Company. What makes it so special is that it's my grandmother and my grandfather that are singing. They were opera singers. They lived in New York City for about 3 years. I'll tell you the story of why that happened. And so they recorded several sides for the Edison Recording Company. Now, we have to remember recording studios back then, it was a long metallic funnel that was connected to a mechanical needle. So it was a acoustic recording, if you would. And basically the whole band would assemble around this huge metal funnel, and the engineer would balance the instruments depending on how loud or how soft they were singing, with the singer standing in front of it. And all of those vibrations would be recorded into the record. And so my grandmother, being a mezzo-soprano singer, she sang popular songs from the era for the Edison Company. And it's been hard finding these records. As you can imagine, not many have survived. And those who have survived, sometimes they're not in great shape, but these happen to be in great shape. And I thought that it would be a nice talking point to bring to the program and to show you guys.
Yeah, they
about
looked
that.
in original condition.
Yes, they're and if you look at it,
Well, it looks very thick.
Yeah,
it's
they're really
extremely
aren't
thick.
they? Yeah.
Like, is that like a quarter-inch thick, maybe?
I would think so. Yes,
Wow.
It's at least
They
a quarter
just
inch.
gleam, don't they?
Yes, they do.
They're
And you know
beautiful.
what it is? To me, vinyl. I have a very special affection towards vinyl because it's like a Rosetta Stone. It'll still play 100 years from now.
Yeah.
And there's digital backups that we don't know if they're going to last 10 or 20 years.
Really?
That's why we need to back up. People back up. It's
Yeah,
important.
yeah.
It's highly volatile. But,
Are
shellac
your
records.
grandparents on both of these records?
On one record, it's a duet. And the other one is just my grandmother.
Wow. And those are probably, 30-minute?
No. 3 minute?
That's a 3-minute.
That's a 3-minute song.
It's like a 45, huh?
It's like a 45
Oh, wow.
because they're running at 80 RPMs.
But they're bigger than a 45.
Yes, they
Yeah.
are bigger and thicker than a
Yeah.
45.
Yeah,
Because a 45 is very thin.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So,
Wow.
yes, I thought that you guys would get a kick out of that. And now the reason why they moved to New York for 3 years is because my father's sister, she suffered from a Pott's disease, Potts disease, not Pott's, not Putz disease. Pott's disease was basically tuberculosis on the spine. And so there was a clinic in Rochester, and even though Rochester was 5 hours away from New York, that was the closest clinic that they could attend in order to help her heal from this, which there's no cure for it. And what that entails is that her vertebra, her spinal cord, over time, it creates a hump. And so her growth, she didn't grow to be a full adult. And so that's the reason why they moved to New York, to see if the treatment would help her in the long run.
And then did they go back to Mexico?
They went back to Mexico, yes.
Did it help her?
No, it didn't. I don't know much about my father's sister. I know that she grew up to be a better person because my grandma's voice. There's YouTube videos that I can send you links to, where people have transferred some of these records. The purity of the sound of that voice was just absolutely beautiful, and her range was just absolutely stunning, and it was very clean. And my father's sister did not have, her voice did not possess those qualities.
Oh,
And
let
so-
me ask you on these. Were these? Did they do mass distribution of these?
Yes. There were
Million sellers,
Yes, no, I wouldn't say no. That back then
I'm
there was
joking, yeah.
No, that's okay. The first million seller was actually my Fair Lady. That was the first
Oh,
million
really?
seller. Yes,
Oh,
that
yeah?
was the first million seller album. No, I think that these would. I don't know if they would sell like 4,000. I think it was a hit.
Yeah. Wow.
And back then the important thing were jukeboxes.
yeah. Right.
Jukeboxes. That's where people would make their money on.
Ah. Oh, so the record would play on the jukebox, and of course they pay every time they played it.
That is correct.
I
Yes, just
see.
like Nickelodeon's back then.
So it doesn't have to be a big seller; it just has to be a big player on a jukebox.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Right.
I don't think that she got any royalties from that. I think that it was just one of those, one-time payment kind of thing. And then Edison did his business. And there are certain records of that called recreation that they just basically dubbed one of those records into another record. They're not as good. They're noisier because they're basically making a copy of the copy.
See, well, Carlos, I want to go more into what you're doing today and
Sure.
maybe future projects, but let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Absolutely.
Sometimes, even the best of us can slip up. That's why the law offices of Scott Wormuth are here to pick you back up again.
And while they strive to get you the biggest compensation possible, oh my gosh!
Their main concern is your health and recovery. They work closely with doctors and insurance companies to make sure you get the proper medical treatment.
Initial consultations are free, so give them a call.
At the law offices of Scott Wormuth, we're with you all the way.
I'm Scott Wormuth. We've been fighting for your rights for more than 40 years.
All right, we're back with Carlos. Carlos, when we return from the break, we like to ask questions from this deck of cards called Icebreakers.
Oh, wow.
And it's just a fun way for the audience to get to know us a little bit differently. So
Sure.
Here we go. What's something you believed earlier in your career but think differently about now? I'll start. So I thought that I could work at a level at this certain intensity without rest, without break, and not burn out. And now I see the importance of being intentional about rest and being aware of like how long and how intense I'm going, and the importance of rest. Yeah,
I would tend to think that at one point in my life, the things that I wanted to do, I was told by many people around me to just basically ground myself and to do and not to try to reach up so high for such high goals, because they didn't want to see me disappointed. And I think that that's the worst thing that you can tell a person these days. When anybody asks me for advice, is do this, whatever advice is whatever you feel that is right for you to do, because who am I to say what the potential is for a person?
yeah. Scott?
You know, I don't know why. I'm just not good at answering these kind of questions. But I could certainly take from both of your answers, you know. I think those are things I've learned too, you know. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not a very original thinker, I guess.
Maybe it's being put on the spot.
Something about it. I'm just not a good icebreak answerer. But I like the game. I like the fact that we're participating in it, and every once in a while I have a good answer.
Well, if you're listening or watching online, what's something you believed earlier in your career but think about differently now? Let us know in the comments. So, thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
You obviously work with very recognizable people and talent, and what's that like for you? Do you get caught up in that? Are you always reaching to work with like the next big star, or do you just enjoy the process in general?
No, I look forward in working with people that are talented. That's my bottom line, regardless of their stature, as far as how well known or how less known they are. I look for ubiquity. I look for uniqueness. I look for things that I feel that I can put, in Spanish we say, mi granito de arena, that means my grain of salt, and my contribution to a project that can make a difference. I think that by being fortunate to have worked with all of these different artists, I have gained a perspective that I know what certain things that work, that they won't necessarily work with another artist if they're trying to mimic or try to replicate. Success is not something that you can replicate. It's something that is created and it's unique to each individual.
And do you have plans to do this until you can no longer do it?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
My
Okay.
wife hates hearing that. Absolutely. I love it too much. Oh. I absolutely enjoy being part of the process and working with different people from all walks of life. I think it's one of the most rewarding and fulfilling jobs, in that I can interact with people from different walks of life, different cultures, different countries. It's absolutely amazing. I was given the gift of travel by my mother. I was fortunate to have traveled to China in 1984 when people were still wearing green uniforms and there were barely any automobiles. I was fortunate enough to go to Cairo and experience that in the early 80s. to India, all of these things, all of these places that have changed so much now, and that it really broadened my scope of the world and how connected we are to each other, regardless of the cultural differences. It's just absolutely amazing.
Has the travel been work related?
No, that was when I was a child.
Oh, okay.
When I was a kid, my mother basically that was her hobby.
Oh,
she loved to travel, so she would gather up her 4 sons.
Wow.
Cash in the belly and traveler's checks, if you remember those.
Yeah, I remember those.
Oh, she was kamikaze, dude. I mean, it was like, she goes, we're leaving. And, back then there were travel agencies. So her cousin owned a travel agency, and they would do a telefax, and that was before faxes. And
telegrams.
and she was very brave, and she would just go for it. That's,
wow.
I think that if you ask me where not if you ask me, like we're in the East Coast. Yeah. If you ask me where my not chutzpah, but my drive to try things, it comes from my mother. I mean, this woman was absolutely unstoppable, and she had a thirst for knowledge, a thirst for travel, and a thirst to be with people, understand people, listen to people. That's I think that's where I got my listening skills from. It was from my mother. It was an extraordinary listener, extraordinary thinker.
Was it just the two of you?
No. It was with my other 3 brothers.
Oh.
I have 3. I'm the 4th. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings.
Wow. So she would bring 4 kids. That's difficult, boy.
Extremely difficult.
Yeah.
These guys.
And you went to China, the 4 of you?
Yes. Yeah, before, once China
I lived
opened
in China, in 1986. I lived there.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yes.
So you got to see the transition.
I've seen it for 40 plus years. Yeah. So I know when you talk about 84 China, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
There were no cars.
Nothing.
There was no lights in the streets.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Wow, that's interesting. And your mother would just haul the 4 of you around.
Yes, that is correct.
Wow, it
was a great gift.
It really is.
It was a great gift, and I'm very grateful.
Now, do you travel now in your business or in your work?
Not as much as I would like to, but hopefully in the future I intend to.
Where would be places you would go now?
I want to go to places that I haven't been to. I haven't been to Finland. I would love to go there. I would love to go to places like Bangladesh or Thailand, places that I've never been to.
Yeah.
Japan. I have an extreme love and respect for Japanese culture.
Oh yeah.
And places that I haven't seen.
Yeah, right.
And now those roads are more traveled than they were.
Yeah.
Even back then.
Yeah.
Apparently now is the time to go to Japan. The yen is or the dollars.
That's what I hear. Yes.
Like 40-year high.
Yeah.
Yeah. To Japan.
Yes, that's what I heard too.
Everybody I know is going to Japan.
Well, Carlos, do you have children of your own?
I do. Yes, I have a lovely daughter. She's now about to turn 12. Her name is Lucero.
And do you travel with her? Have you traveled with her?
Yes, we have traveled with her to Mexico. Basically, that's the only place that we've gone to when we've gone on vacation or to visit family with my wife Karen.
And what age did you go there with? Well, how old was she when you went there?
Oh God, she must have been a year old when she started traveling with us. So she loves traveling. She's when you tell her, oh, we're gonna go on a trip, she's already packing.
Oh yeah,
and it's ready to go. Yeah. She has that spirit of adventure, same spirit that her mother has and her grandmother had.
I have two young ones, and maybe Scott can weigh in on this. Like, if you want to go somewhere, like let's say Japan, right? You want them to be able to appreciate the experience, right? And sometimes, like when they're too young, they may not be able to even remember it or appreciate what they're experiencing.
It's just it's not Disneyland, so they're not happy, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, when you're a kid, there's things that you want and crave. Like I did not adjust kindly to the food that I got in China because it was very strange to me.
Yeah.
Very, very strange.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we went to Hong Kong that there was a McDonald's. It's like, seeing an oasis, and then the whole, the waters open, that it was just like, salvation. But as a kid, those are your standards. That's what you look at. But going back to what you were saying, Russell, I think that traveling stays with you, even though it's not in it's not in the forefront of your mind, but it's in the subconscious.
Sure.
That those things do
I agree.
Do stay with you.
Yeah. It has some impact in some way.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Well, Carlos, we're going to move on to the final segment of the show, where we get to learn a little bit more about what you like about the San Gabriel Valley.
Okay.
Carlos, this is what we call the SGV3, and we ask you to share your 3 favorite or most memorable places or experiences in the San Gabriel Valley.
Oh, God, I had 2. But okay.
Oh, you only had 2?
Well, okay. Let me start with my favorite breakfast restaurant, which is Russell's.
Oh,
I absolutely love Russell's in Pasadena.
Great name.
Yeah. Too bad you don't own it.
I know. That's on Fair Oaks.
That's on Fair Oaks. And they have the best breakfasts ever. The freshest eggs that I've ever tasted in Los Angeles.
Do they only do breakfast?
No. They have other
They used to be open for dinner. I don't know if they still are, because when I walk by now, it's, say late afternoon, it's closed. So, I've had dinner there before, but I somehow think maybe after the pandemic, they stopped dinner.
It could be.
Yeah. Yeah,
I've only gotten there for breakfast.
So it's definitely known for the breakfast, and it's the only place to eat in Old Town for breakfast, as far as I can remember.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Well, obviously I like you because of the name, right? But here's some interesting things too. Like the way that the sign is how my cursive is.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like specifically how they do the R. Right? Everything else is pretty standard, but how they do the R is how I write it. So every time I drive by that sign and look at it, it looks like my handwriting.
That's funny.
Yeah, because you know how your name looks, right, when you write it.
Yes,
right?
absolutely. Now I'm making the connection. Okay, yes. No, it's just happened to be my favorite restaurant, Russell.
Awesome.
Sorry.
And what would be a second place?
The second place would have to be the swap meet at the Rose Bowl.
Oh, okay. What do you like about that?
The tchotchkes that are available there, all of the different things that you can find there. I'm a firm believer that antiquities, you got to be careful with those, because they come with a certain level of energy. Either it feels good when you're holding it, or it doesn't. And when it doesn't, I like to say, from a metaphysical point of view, that it's not meant to be yours. So you just put it down. I like seeing different things from different eras, I guess. I guess that at one time somebody described me as an old soul, so maybe it's just reminiscent of old eras. I don't know.
So that is still once a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what distinguishes a swap meet? Like, are people bringing goods that they make? Are they bringing their old household stuff to sell? Like,
I think it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
I haven't been there in a while, but it's a mixed bag.
I think it could be anything. I mean, you could have food. I think there's food there. I'm not sure. Food booths, but yeah, it could be people just bringing their own items.
Like, is it? Sorry if this is inaccurate, but it's like a garage sale. Like they're just bringing their stuff to
me.
Sell
that's
here?
what it's like.
Yeah, some stands are just, they have more stuff to sell, and some of these people, that's how they make a living.
Some of them are professional.
Absolutely.
Sort of. They move from one swap meet to another. That's their business.
It's like an Antiques Roadshow on steroids.
Yeah, yeah.
I see, and that's interesting that you may reject a piece based on how it makes you feel.
I'm very sensitive that way. It's part of the job description, I guess.
Sure.
You have to have a sensitivity to things, to people. You got to learn how to read the room really fast. One time, can I share an anecdote with you? There was a country singer that was working at a studio, was an assistant, And he was just in a very foul mood. Nothing went right. And so the studio manager went out in Los Angeles. It's just great, in San Gabriel Valley too, that you can find these specialty shops that have, different soda drinks from different regions of the country. So she found out what his favorite soda pop was, which is from Tennessee, and she got it from him. And he was surprised when he saw that. And that completely turned the tide completely. Because he said, and the reason why he was so upset, he was touring so much that he missed home. So by her giving her that soda pop, it made him feel like home, that he was home. And just it's amazing how just one thing we do can turn a whole situation around. Yeah. And it's all about perceiving where people are at,
Yeah.
The right touch, huh?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And Carlos, what would be a third place?
Oh, God. Cook's Tortas. Is that a cop out? Hopefully it's not a cop out.
Okay. And so what do you like about Cook's Tortas?
I like the philosophy in the way that they prepare the food. I like the fact that they make their own bread from scratch, that there's a person there since 4 o'clock in the morning making all of this bread for people to enjoy that day. I appreciate the fact that the owners care about the quality of ingredients that they use, that everything is fresh, and the way that they treat people and the way that they make you feel at home. And now they added tacos to their tortas. So now they have certain tacos for people who want to just, share a torta and eat like one or two different tacos. So it's a family place that feels home, and I love them. So I guess that my perspective is also biased.
Are the flavors familiar to you, like what you grew up with?
Yes, they are. Yeah. Yes, they are. And they have a wide variety of different tortas, and for people of that, they have a Cuban type of sandwich that is pork based that is just absolutely delicious, but they also have vegetarian options that are incredibly good, and they care. They deeply care about what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, Carlos, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your stories with us. If people want to get in touch with you, I don't know if that's something you want the public, but
absolutely, they can go to my website. It's Carlos Castro, www.carloscastro.com, or they can find me on Instagram. My handle name is Watersound Pro, all one word.
Thank you so much, Carlos, for being on the show. We do appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Another show in the books. That was really fascinating too. I really enjoy the experience, the education, the insight that we get into all different walks of life. And today we got to see, this professional and how he came into his journey and his experience. And as a person who loves music, I never understood all that goes on behind the scenes. And it sounds like there's, so much more to it than just people coming together, playing their instruments and putting a microphone there. So I get to appreciate more now all the work that goes behind it because of Carlos. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to hear more, please check out our website where you can find the full back catalog of episodes, mysgv.net. If you want to support the show in a more meaningful way, please consider becoming a patron. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And until next week, we'll see you then. Thank you for joining us on the MySGV podcast. Check out more of our content on our website, mysgv.net. This show was produced by Scott Wormuth, directed by Russell Mano, edited by Victoria Allers, and original music by Yone OG. If you'd like to join us next week as we capture and share more stories from our diverse community, feel welcome.
Nice mother. No, kind of mother.